Formula One has a new record holder for the outright most race wins after Lewis Hamilton continued his winning ways at the Algarve International Circuit in Portugal today. Welcome back to the Grid Top podcast. Today we'll be reviewing the Portuguese Grand Prix. Hosting today will be me, Ruby Price, and joining me are F1 expert Alex Booth.
Hello.
CEO of the Chris Medland fan club, Sam Thatcher.
Hiya.
And motorsport podcaster Philip Mathew.
Hello.
Now, Sam, it was a race of two halves for Hamilton today. He aced the start, but dropped back to third later in the lap before racing to catch up to Bottas. But then the second half of the race, he was just dominant, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. I think today he's definitely staked his claim as possibly the greatest of all time. It's probably down to interpretation whether you think that or not. Yeah, they say off the start, it looked like his tyres weren't really up to temperature. He looked like he was really struggling tentative towards the end of that first lap, which was pretty chaotic, which then allowed everyone, because he had a really good start and then Bottas kind of dropped back to third, which kind of felt like it was going to be a normal race. Then about halfway through the lap, everything changed. And yeah, it was just really tentative at the end of the lap, which allowed Sainz to get through. Then, as you say, he just kind of, once he'd cleared Sainz, he just kind of came up on Bottas like out of nowhere. Like I didn't even notice like how quickly he was closing in on him. I don't think even the TV coverage noticed that either. And all of a sudden, he was just right behind him. Just, yeah, simple overtake, DRS, wide open. Then, yeah, after that, it was a walk in the park, wasn't it, really? Lapped everyone up and up to Perez, I think, up to fifth. And, yeah, 92 wins. I'll be very surprised he doesn't clear 100 by the middle of next season, really.
And he was cramping up towards the end of the race
as
well.
Yeah, cramping up. And then, of course, we got to get the usual Hamilton, Bono, my tyres are gone. Then the next lap he goes and sets the fastest lap of the race so far. He just seems to have no kind of, he doesn't seem to make mistakes ever. Like ever since 2017, like since he lost to Rosberg, he's just been unstoppable. And he is definitely up there with Schumacher as the GOAT, definitely.
Now, Philip, Valtteri Bottas, he was miles behind today by the time we finished the end of the race. But, he asked Mercedes for a completely different strategy to Hamilton, despite the fact that Mercedes have always made it clear that their drivers get the exact same strategy these days to make it fair. He knows that he's asking to go against the rules, but Mercedes are clamping down on that. He wants to try and claim some ground back, but I think he's just lost this fight, hasn't he?
Yeah, unfortunately today he had an opportunity after Lewis had the issues, as Sam mentioned, on lap one with all the changeable weather conditions with the rain and drizzle. It was going on all race. For Bottas, he got position. Of course, Sainz, we'll talk about him later, but he got position too, and he got the lead and he made a gap, but Lewis sat there and just chipped away at it. They had the graining going on. Once the graining period kind of went away, Lewis was making time up in chunks. And at that moment, I mean, we could talk about how many different times where it's kind of like the soul has been taken away from Valtteri Bottas. But not only was he passed like he wasn't there, then 25-second victory in the same car, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. And, Lewis was on his throttle foot or calf. He's having issues with it. I mean, you could tell in the post-race, the conversation with Martin, that everything was just out of Valtteri. Like, he wanted to stay out, I think, to stay out longer, to try to possibly go on a soft. But, I mean, at that point, what does it matter? I get that that's the rule per se, but let him do that. He's not going to make a difference. And he said it himself. It wasn't going to make a difference anyway. So let him go run, get a fastest lap. It wouldn't have made a difference in terms of the overall race thing, the race result. And it's a shame for him, but it's something where, and with some of the rumors that are going around, who knows what's really going to happen with Valtteri. But there has to be a point where we have to start thinking about, is he the right person to be in that second seat? Or maybe they just are happy with what he does in the second seat and they're okay with that.
I think that Mercedes are always happy as long as he finishes second if Lewis finishes first. And for Valtteri Bottas, that's not what he wants, but that's what he's been hired to do. But Alex, Philip mentioned this, like Valtteri wanted to go into the softs, but it wouldn't have been enough. We saw today that the softs weren't really a tire to, go on, as Max Verstappen was on the started on the softs. He was basically nowhere for quite a while, but he finished third, which is the least that Max Verstappen wants at this point.
Yeah, the soft tyres, they had an advantage at the very beginning because we saw that we had Carlos Sainz in the lead and Kimi Raikkonen going up all the way to sixth place. Max Verstappen, he had a very poor start and he got caught up with Sergio Perez after he'd been forced wide by Bottas, and then he came back onto the track and it was probably a racing incident, but it's probably avoidable. I think Perez was very unlucky there to be spun round by Verstappen, and that put Verstappen on the back foot. I think had that not happened, I think Verstappen could very well have been leading the race in the opening stage. I don't think it would have made a difference to the result because Mercedes was so superior today. Verstappen finishing third is pretty much the best he could have hoped for. It's not what he wants. After he got his act together from the start age over what we come to expect for him, it was a very good performance. Finished, even lapped his teammate, which is not very good for his teammate, should I say. But it was another Hamilton Bottas Verstappen podium. As you know, we've seen that quite a few times this season already, and in that order as well. And Verstappen's just doing the very best he can to kind of keep in touch with the Mercedes. Although today, more than we've seen on other circuits, Mercedes just had the edge, and even Hamilton was 25 seconds ahead of Bottas, and it just shows that those black cars were in a class of their own.
And it's sort of worrying signs as well for like a team that have stopped developing their car to be so far ahead of a team that are still fighting to try and,
exactly.
finish the season on a high. And Sam, a team, that we keep not expecting to see much of this season, but Charles Leclerc is doing a stellar job in that Ferrari, particularly to, finish in fourth when normally if he has managed to qualify fourth, he just tends to drop back. But a well-earned fourth place today from Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, like I was aware this weekend that Ferrari had brought quite a few upgrades to the track. Like they had a new diffuser, I believe, and as well as new upgrades to the aero, to the front wing, I believe, as well. So it looks as though they're going in the right direction from where they were at the start of the season, which was in a very bad place. Yeah, and Leclerc just seems to be like keeps driving that car, like getting all the potential out of the car that he can, like driving it into a poly position that it doesn't really deserve. I didn't really see a lot of him today, to be honest. He was kind of out on his own in fourth and like well clear of the rest of the midfield, and not really able to catch up to Max at all. Even though Max was on quite old tire, even though Max's tires went off quite quickly at the start. But yeah, no, another really good drive from Leclerc. He's definitely cementing himself as the leader of that team this season and the seasons to come. And in the future, when Ferrari do get back to the front of the grid, because I believe they will get back to the front of the grid eventually. They always do. Ferrari have history of this kind of thing, like dropping down the field and eventually have a period of dominance again, which I firmly believe will come again one day. And when that day comes, Leclerc will be there leading the team ready to the title fight. So he's doing all he can at the moment. Yeah, if it wasn't for some of the other drives today, I reckon he could have stuck a claim for driver of the day. But because he didn't really do a lot, I think he's just kind of a good day at the office to him.
And a day as well that was sort of set up by being able to qualify on those medium tires as well.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
His teammate failed to do.
Yeah, that was quite an interesting thing yesterday when they came out with mediums on. Kind of questioning it, but looks like the new upgrades that they brought made a lot of difference. So
exactly. Now, a driver who absolutely had a stellar day as well today, Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri Honda, finishing fifth. That's a job well done for Pierre Gasly today.
Well, this has been the trend. We've talked about it here on the show. And we're going to talk about it later in regards to who he was replaced by, but the podium at the Brazilian Grand Prix last year around this time basically put Pierre Gasly into this new place where we're seeing his true potential and his ability, and they didn't allow him to blossom and build into that. and now they're like, oh, well, we need a leader for this team, so that's what he's going to be. And he's been doing this for many races this year. A 5th place today, taking advantage of the issues with one of the midfield teams, taking advantage of McLaren's issues as well. Great job by them. Great job by that organization with the car, even with, the horsepower deficit that they may have. They were able to make DRS work. They had a good, stable package that was good on the tires. And I mean, it's something to where I'm curious. I'm not surprised anymore. He's doing this every race, basically. I'm more looking forward to what's going to come for him next year and even in 22, and his options. I think that's really where we have to start looking at Pierre Gasly. It's like, what is his next move going to be? Because he's probably not going to be in the Red Bull family. I think that's where the next piece is for him. But I do believe they're going to be able to do some interesting and positive things here in the next season or so, as long as he's there.
Absolutely. Like, the Red Bull family is not the place for Pierre Gasly to be post next season if he, stays next season. But Alex, you've already touched on the race of Perez today. Actually, no. But yeah, we'll talk Perez. He looked like he was going to hold on for 5th place at the end, potentially even get up to 4th, depending on how fast his tyres got. But, they just sort of fell off towards the end, and he was overtaken by Gasly and Sainz within the last 3 laps of the race. Some questionable moves defending towards the end, but a 7th place nonetheless. To say where he ended up after lap 1, it's a good race today for Perez.
It was a good drive. I think he was really fired up after the opening lap incident, and he did a really good recovery. The defence against Gasly was pretty questionable. It was very hard racing. There might be some consequences of that that we'll see. It's not really the completely correct, but at that late stage in the race, it's natural that you're going to defend your position to try and do whatever you can to keep it. It was just unfortunate for him that his tyres had gone off by that point, because it really did tarnish what had been a great recovery drive, and unfortunately dropped down to 7th, which could have been 5th, and that would have been a terrific performance from him. Again, it's a case of what might have been for Racing Point, because we've seen it quite a lot of times this season that they've had the pace in qualifying and they've been strong and they've not delivered on the Sunday. It was kind of sort of normal service for them, really, and it's horrible to say, but it's the truth in some respect.
Absolutely. So Sam, let's talk Carlos Sainz, who did finish ahead of Sergio Perez. He was leading the race at the start, and honestly, I thought we were going to see a repeat of something similar to Italy, but eventually it was all systems normal again. But Carlos Sainz, he takes his opportunities where they come along, doesn't he?
Yeah. Just quickly on Perez, I believe he's been summoned to the stewards.
Yeah, there was something for the Gasly incident.
Gasly, because it was a late braking maneuver. I reckon he might get a penalty for that, but yeah, we'll see. Yeah, when he got the lead, it was quite a crazy opening lap, wasn't it? For like many different reasons. We had the collision with Perez and Verstappen, and then Sainz getting ahead of Hamilton and Bottas. But yeah, I never really believed he would stay there for long, to be honest, because like once the tyres of the Mercedes kind of came to life, he was just sitting up for them, and it just seemed to be like him and both McLarens didn't really seem to have a lot of pace on the soft tyres at the start. And once kind of things had settled down, so they were just kind of going backwards, which kind of I thought they might drop out of the points of that race, but then Sainz had a good race. Another solid drive from him. He's been very unlucky this year, hasn't he? He probably deserves more points than what he's got on the board, because obviously he did not start in Spa and several other DNFs that kind of haven't been his fault. So yeah, he's only got how many more races left in McLaren? 5 more races left before he goes to Ferrari next year. I think he want to send off with another few good races. Yeah, a good drive from him. He did well at the start to avoid the Perez and Verstappen incident. He had to kind of dive out of the way of that. So yeah, good job from him on that to get in the lead. Yeah, a solid drive. Solid drive from him.
Solid drive. And if he'd had a few more solid drives and was a bit more fortunate McLaren could be very far ahead in terms of that battle for third place this season,
Yeah.
which is so close.
At
And
the start
the
of the
next
season, at the start of the season, they seemed to be kind of like clearly third in the like constructors race, but then kind of Renault and Racing Point have called that back. So it's going to be a really good battle to see who comes out on top for that battle for third, because there's a lot of money on the line for that position.
Yeah, I hope it goes to the end of the season, because it's the closest battle really that we've got, other than, you know, between 0 and 1 point. So yeah, it'll be nice to see. But a driver who, you know, has sort of finished ahead of the people who, you know, he's aiming for, Esteban Ocon, Phil, he finished ahead of his teammate. He, you know, pitted lap 54. He made a set of medium tires last that long. Like, fair play, Esteban, fair play. Like, you know, I feel like this is a race where he could have silenced some of his critics.
Yeah, it's been pretty rough season for him. He's been outperformed in all aspects by Ricardo, and with the Fred Alonso coming back too, you know that he's got an alpha coming in. It's going to be very difficult for him next year. But this car, it's weird with the Renaults. One day they're really, really fast, and one day they're just absolutely nowhere. Qualifying, of course, they got into friendly fire, cost Ricardo because of Ocon being on the right there in Q2. To go and to do the overcut, which was legitimately an overcut, and make that tire last that long, I imagined, and I think Renault imagined, that there would have been a safety car at some point today, based on how the track lays out and the way it's similar to Mugello in a lot of ways, but there wasn't. So the cars spread out, everybody was able to, and he was able to make time. And in the end, the overcut worked. Good race for him. Needed it. It's been a very rough season for him. So we will see how they respond as they go to Imola next week, and a much longer, faster kind of circuit. So I think that would probably suit them more. So let's see if he can put back-to-back races together here coming into next week at Imola.
And Alex, from podium to just 2 points, Daniel Ricciardo, you know, just behind his teammate, but he'll have been hoping for more this weekend.
Yeah, it will have been. Renault looked slightly ambiguous, really, today. They weren't really in the fight compared to where they were at the Nürburgring. And Ocon had the upper hand on Ricciardo today. He outperformed him, which he really needed to do. Yeah, it wasn't really one to write home about for Renault today. Ricciardo was competitive early on, pulling some manoeuvres on the McLarens, because the DRS enabled a lot of people to make manoeuvres today. But yeah, it wasn't the best performance from Renault, and I think their debrief will be let's move on from this, and we'll go to Imola next weekend.
Absolutely. Now, last week when Louis suggested that Vettel might get points in his bold prediction, I just laughed. But Sebastian Vettel, P10, got 1 point. It was a pretty impressive display, but whilst not being that really impressive today.
Yeah, it's kind of forgot he was there for like most of it. It sounds really bad to say, but for a four-time world champion, I just forgot. But him and Kimi, like at the moment, seem to be kind of joined at the hip a lot of the races, which is crazy. Which is crazy to say because of the fact that Kimi's in an Alpha and Seb's in a Ferrari. I think he's just done, isn't he? He wants out of that team really badly now. He must be looking forward to next year a lot to go to Aston Martin. Obviously, no idea how that's actually going to go. Whether he can like regain his mojo again, don't know. We'll have to see. I would like. I'm not like a massive fan of Seb or anything, but I do quite. I like him. I like him now a lot more than I liked him back when he was winning everything. So I know that's quite an easy thing to say, but yeah, he's definitely matured. Like he's quite a funny guy nowadays. So I'm glad to see him staying around the paddock next year. I'm glad he's not retiring because I think he does deserve the chance at possibly a top drive. But yeah, today a good job to get 10th. I mean, it's nothing to write home about, but yeah, it was a decent job. It's kind of where Ferrari are, isn't it? They're kind of around that 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. Well, I say that. Well, Leclerc, yeah, he's got. I mean, compared to Leclerc this year, he's been woeful, hasn't he? To be honest, because Leclerc's bossed him every race this year. I think that's just a symptom of him just being completely done with Ferrari. Yeah, he's not won the title there, which I think he wanted to do. So it's going to be sad end to his Ferrari career, but I think he can't wait for it to be over now.
And we've seen him get 2 points in the last 6 races, so it is true that this is basically where Vettel's pace is, even with an improved Ferrari car.
Yeah, and he got out qualified by George Russell yesterday as well. Yeah, that just shows where he's at mentally, I think. Yeah,
and Phil, Kimi Räikkönen was racing in the points positions for a while today, but in the end it was 11th. Kimi, it's just another day for Kimi, isn't it?
Well, he had that great start there, Ruby. I mean, that was with the changeable conditions, and he was up there in 6th, and he was running up front. And then once it dried out, of course, the car is got so much drag that he's going to get beat that way. Plus, all the other restrictions that exist. But that's you saw the signs of a guy that's won 20 plus Formula One races and a world championship, and you saw that it was a kind of circuit and a kind of weekend where Kimi could be his driving be at his best. The problem is the car does not fit his talent, unfortunately, at this point. But 42 years old, still going, and it looks like he's going to be going for another year to make Dev and all of the Kimi fans happy. Curious to see who his teammate will be, but he could have had a point there. It was kind of not. It didn't work out based on strat and all the other things. But I mean, he ran up front. He was on TV. That's not usually how it is for Kimi and the Alfa Romeo team. So credit to him, the wily veteran of the sport now.
And now a driver who should absolutely be doing better than he's currently doing, Alexander Albon, P12. Not a good day for him.
No, not at all. I mean, you saw him in the paddock after the race. He looks like a dead man walking, to be honest. He knows his position is on the line at Red Bull, and it's clearly got to him. I think it's the official F1 feed or something with Will Buxton. They were talking about a theory that they pitted him early to kind of get some data for Verstappen on the tyres, and there probably is a degree of truth in that. I mean, we've seen that happen before when number 2 drivers, that much of a number 2, that they're literally there just to, drive the second car and potentially get some track experience for the other car in changeable weather conditions. And I'm not saying that was the case, but it's a possibility. It certainly ruined Albon's race because to qualify, I think he qualified 6th and ended up 12th. Something's clearly gone wrong. But yeah, it's another addition to the list of below par performances from Alex Albon this season, and in this weekend, even Red Bull themselves were giving him a goal. I think it was a minimum of 4th position, which he's not done. He's got, I think it's 5 more races that we've got to the end of the season, but I think it's a matter of when, not if, that there's going to be an announcement of a Red Bull's driver announcement, which does not include him.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this to the group whilst the race was on, but this is the driver that Red Bull promoted over Pierre Gasly after Pierre Gasly occasionally finished 7th at a lowest, whereas now Alex Albon's not finishing in the points, whilst Red Bull are trying to. I mean, they're not going to win the championship, but they're trying to at least make a claim to be, hey, we're still a team that could win a championship. But that's just not going to happen with the current driver pairing.
He was lapped today as well by.
He was lapped by his teammate who wasn't in first.
That's never a good sign.
Yeah, when we saw that happen in Austria last year to Gasly, that was pretty much it, wasn't it?
Dead man. Yeah, that was when he was dead man walking right then.
Yeah. So that logic kind of says he's going to be out of the seat. He's going to be out of Red Bull, and to be honest, I don't see him. Will they send him back to Tauri? I don't know because
send him back to F2.
Yeah, that'd be brutal. I could see him in Formula E potentially, because obviously he was going to go Formula E before he got the seat, but obviously he's still got 5 races to prove he's worth the seat. But right now it's looking like he may be out of the seat.
If he doesn't finish, go on, Alex.
because last year when Gasly was at Red Bull, they had Albon in the pipeline at Toro Rosso as it was then, and now that's not like that. If there was a young driver at AlphaTauri, but a Red Bull Academy driver currently doing well, they'd have probably dropped Albon by now and put that. That's just the way that the Red Bull system seems to work, and it's not worked in the case of Albon. But that's probably why Albon's lasted the whole season as he has. Knowing how cruel and ruthless Helmut Marko can be, I think if for instance, a Yuki Tsunoda or someone of that caliber was in AlphaTauri at the moment, they probably would have promoted them to Red Bull by now already. And I might be wrong, but it could have happened.
Yeah, they've got too much pride to promote Gasly back up to the main seat because they've obviously already given the trial, but they didn't. They're giving Albon a hell of a lot more time than they gave Gasly, and Albon's not really done that much better, to be honest.
Absolutely not.
So get Hulk in there.
Let's move on to Lando Norris, who finished 13th, but probably could have finished a lot higher had he not, had his wing clipped by a certain pink driver. Sam, 13th. He had a slow puncture as well. It's another weekend where Lando Norris could have done rather well, but just it wasn't there for him.
Yeah, it started with similar signs, wasn't it? He had great pace off grip, but then just kept like every lap he was getting overtaken by somebody. Yeah, and that move by Stroll was just a ridiculous move, really. Like to go around the outside and then just completely turn in as if he wasn't there, just completely cut him off, leaving Lando nowhere to go. And Lando called him some expletives on the team radio, which I won't. Yeah. So, and then after that, his race was kind of over, to be honest, wasn't it? Because sure, Stroll gets the 5-second penalty, but that doesn't really help Lando, does it?
Yeah.
His race is pretty much over there, and his sort of chance to get points was ended right in that moment.
I would imagine Stroll got the penalty because Lando also had to pit, whereas if Lando hadn't have had to pit, they would have just called it a racing incident and moved on.
Yeah, I mean, when you ruin someone's race like that, you deserve to be penalised for it, and then you have kind of, I guess you're expecting him to be biased, but you have Otmar Safnauer on Sky Sports saying, "Oh, it's a racing incident." When it just clearly wasn't, was it? It was clearly just a stupid move around it, a very impatient move, I'd say, around the outside. Didn't leave him any room. He can go at the inside there, much more room, kind of squeeze Lando out, and that's fair enough. But when you chop one off like that, it's just not on, is it?
I don't know how many overtakes that took place on that front straightaway over the entire 3 days that they were there at Portimao, but there was literally there was 2 incidents there. I mean, there were others that could have happened, but there were 2 incidents, and they both included Stroll. And in both cases, it was either he doesn't know how to use his mirrors or he's a moron. I mean, fundamentally, we can argue, and there's debate based on what happened on Friday. I mean, you have 2 egomaniacs happening there. That's kind of what was going to happen. It was unnecessary on Max's part because you're affecting your race weekend for no reason against somebody that is a non-factor. What he did today makes no sense. And I mean, okay, fine. You want to go and shoot the gap. All right, fine. You have like a mile to the inside. He decides to go left where there's not enough track to even have grip. That's step 1. Then step 2, he goes and decides to clear himself across the nose like Alex Albon did to Kvyat in Germany. Okay, so that's strike 2. And then strike 3, you go and you're in the sand and you act like nothing happened. And then you have your boss going and covering for you. Like, come on, like have a clue. That's just unnecessary. It's out of bounds, and he didn't get it. I mean, in the end, he falls out, but it was just a really idiotic move. There's people who have done moves similar to that, and they've got way worse than what he got for that.
So let's talk about George Russell. Alex, he was on the verge of points up until he pitted, but after that it didn't quite seem like he'd be able to pull off anything better, did it?
No, the field kind of settled down a bit more towards the later stages when all the pit stops were done. But George, again, his Saturday pace was unquestionable, out qualifying Vettel and qualifying 14th, which is not normally where you expect the Williams to be. And during the race, he was legitimately as high as 7th. But yeah, it just seemed too much to ask, really. In a race where there's only one retirement, Williams aren't going to score points. I've said this many times on the podcast before. It's going to take a crazy race, really, for that to happen. But George again showed his ability amidst the rumours that he could not be in that team next season, with Sergio Perez being linked to the team, which I personally think is nonsense. I can't understand the logic in that at all, but that's another story. Again, George staked his claim of the talent that he is today.
Yeah, but he certainly is a talent, and it will be a shame if he's not on the grid next season. But a talent in inverted commas that is going to be on the grid next season, it would seem, Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo. Sam, 15th today, behind his teammate, but ahead of 2 other Ferrari driver-like engines. What more can we expect from Giovinazzi other than points and his teammate?
Yeah, it's hard to say kind of what Giovinazzi can do. Is because the Alpha, as we saw with Kimi, is completely terrible compared to like the upper midfield cars. Realistically, the only people they should find with are Williams and Haas, and I guess, and a rare occasion when all 20 drivers finish, 15th, you say, is a good result, to be honest, for him. He was well clear of like the rest of them, apart from George. Like he was well clear of both Hasses, well clear of Latifi. If it wasn't for the crazy start, he might have finished ahead of Raikkonen as well. But we obviously. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be the same driver line of Alfa Romeo next year, which I was very surprised to see, because a few weeks ago, looked a dead cert. It was going to be like at least Mick Schumacher there, probably alongside Kimi. And now it looks like Mick might be off to Haas. That's crazy, silly season stuff for you. But yeah, to be fair, if he does stay, I think he deserves another year at least to show like what he's got. I don't think he's a Ferrari driver. To be honest, I don't think he might not, unless he really kicks on next year and the car kicks on. I don't really see how he's ever gets to Ferrari, to be honest. But he's solid drive today. Yeah, I'd like to see him get another year, and then maybe after that, and depends what happens next year. But yeah, it's a decent drive from him. So didn't really do much, but that's more probably the car than him.
Yeah, and Philip, a team that we know are ditching both their drivers for next season, Haas finishing 16th and 17th with Magnussen and Grosjean. It's just a return to form for Haas after Grosjean managed to bag some points last time out.
Yeah, I mean, what Alex and Sam have mentioned earlier in terms of when you have only one retirement, when you know about the pace of the cars, both drivers know they're done. You have a team that's basically in limbo, and they're going to get one legitimate driver at least, it looks like, and definitely one not, which basically fits the trend of Haas forever, basically. But yeah, today that was as good as it was going to be, unless it rained. It's nothing. I mean, for Grosjean, who knows what, he probably go to Peugeot for their Le Mans program. Magnussen, his options in the U.S. don't look like there are a whole lot. Maybe he comes to IMSA, but I think World Endurance Championship or Formula E is the next step for him. Maybe go and join his legendary father and have a legendary Formula One career, but he's had a great career in sports cars. So maybe Kevin follows that trend as well. But yeah, it's same old for Haas, and I don't think that's going to change, even with whether it's Mick Schumacher, whether it's Eilot or whoever. It's not Eilot. They said that he's not a part of it, which is ridiculous. But that's beside the point.
And the first of the 2 lapped runners, as in lapped twice, Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. Alex, as we've mentioned, they're just not going to get up there whilst you've still got, even 15 cars finishing at this point, but 19 cars finishing. It's an impossible task, especially for Nicholas Latifi.
Well, yeah, I mean, what more can I really add to that, really? I think the thing with Latifi, he's doing very well in the sense that he's just bringing the car home, which is really all you can ask him to do. He's not really making any silly mistakes. He's not really getting a fair crack at it, I think. I mean, you could argue that he's really only there because of his family's bank balance, his ability. I know he had a good season in Formula 2 last season, but there were probably other drivers deserving of that seat. But he's not doing a bad job. He's doing pretty much you can ask for him. You can't really expect him to be beating George Russell because we know that George Russell's extremely talented. So again, Nicholas Latifi, just with the equipment he's got, is doing all that's required of him, and it just remains to see whether he'll be at Williams next season. Because although they had contracts, Russell and Latifi, during the Williams family's ownership, there were buyout clauses in that. Contracts don't really seem to mean much these days anyway, and it'll be interesting. Although because of a finance point of view, it probably would make more sense in terms of business to keep Latifi on the payroll. That's not what we really want to see.
Yeah, definitely. We appear to be having some streaming issues with the Facebook thing, but maybe it'll fix itself, hopefully. But yeah, as you've said, the contracts seem to just be a matter of a few lines of code, really, because it's not really, no one's paying attention to them. Racing Point are dropping Perez. There's rumours that Williams are dropping Russell.
Contracts are probably about 50 pages long, and there's probably about 10 clauses in them usually, so they can easily be overruled.
Does anyone remember when Van der Gaard showed up adamant that he still had a seat at Sauber?
Contract, yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, from a business standpoint, for Williams, it probably makes a lot of sense to keep Latifi on because he brings a whole dump load of cash, doesn't he, from his billionaire dad who owns Lavazza and all over the world, coffee company. So
and unlike Maldonado, he's not crashing the car every weekend.
No, to be fair,
loads of repair bill.
Yeah, yesterday in qualifying, it looked as though he was actually kind of keeping pace with George, and then just at the end, he ends up 8 temps off in the end. So that kind of shows the kind of gap between them in terms of pedigree. But to be honest, there's kind of everything wrong with modern F1. The fact that we're even talking about Russell potentially losing his seat because of money. And I mean, I quite like Sergio. He's a good driver and he brings a hell of a lot of cash from Mexico. So from a business kind of point of view, probably makes more sense for Williams to bring him in. But I really hope that George keeps his seat because he deserves to be there. He's wiped the floor with both his teammates.
Absolutely.
Well, I just hope for Perez's sake that's not the step that he has to make to stay in F1 because he deserves better than a Williams seat.
Yeah. Red Bull for him or Hulk in Red Bull.
If Sergio Perez is going to stay in F1, it should be Red Bull or bust, or absolute worst case, Haas. If Haas isn't in play, which it doesn't seem like it should be Red Bull, or else just do whatever you want. Go and freelance, drive sports cars, do kind of whatever you want. I don't understand how driving a Williams for Doritos is actually going to be worth anything. It makes no sense. They're not a good team. Even in their new guys, they're not going to be a good team. They're well behind. They're going to be the worst car next year, no matter what they do. What are you buying into? You're going to buy into 2022. They're going to go back. They're going to just get the time machine to Back to the Future, and they're going to be like 1996. Is that what they're going to bank on? It's going to be 1997 all over again, and Sergio Perez is going to be like Jacques Villeneuve. What do they expect? I don't understand what logic there is to that, other than just I want to be on the grid, which is the same as Kimi, but at least Kimi is doing stuff. I don't see where that works, but hey.
Breaking news: DeLoreans are entering a team in 2022.
Well, just change the Williams to silver. It would be a DeLorean.
They just disappear once they hit 88 miles an hour. But the last of the actual runners, Sam, Danny Kvyat, showing, why he's not being considered for, replacing Albon in the Red Bull. Just a poor day for Kvyat today.
I'll tell you what, I completely forgot he was even in the race until you mentioned him just then. Yeah, he got a penalty for track limits, didn't he?
I mean, who didn't get a penalty for track limits this week?
He was one of those that got 5-second penalty for track limits. Yeah, it's just not much you can say other than it's just a dismal day for him. It's been a meh season for him, really, isn't it? He's a meh driver, isn't he? Really, he doesn't really offer anything special. he kind of had his chance at the big time back in like 2015, didn't he? And then he sort of made a meme of himself with the torpedo. He's never really lived that down. He's never been really taken seriously as a kind of driver that could move up to Red Bull. And yeah, I think he could be out of a seat next season. To be honest, I'd love them to promote Tsunoda or some, or maybe, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, he's definitely not in the hunt for Red Bull, that's for sure. Gasly is different. Is a different league to him, really.
Definitely. And the last driver to be discussed in the actual show today, a driver who hasn't finished 5 races in a row now, if you include the ones that he wasn't in because of, COVID. Lance Stroll, it was just embarrassing today, wasn't it, Phil?
Oh yeah, but it's, par for the course for Lawrence's kid. They started the year as being probably the 3rd best car on the grid, and they have taken this like fall, which in part is due to the guy that is keeping his employment next year because his daddy owns a team, and it's fine. We've gotten used to this. It's like I could see, like we were talking about Latifi, and maybe he needs time, but I think he's basically the same kind of thing as Stroll. He makes boneheaded decisions. He's not really that great. He's had 2 podiums, which both of them you could debate were 2 of the most chaotic races that have ever happened in recent Formula One history. So is it really about him, or is it more about what happened in the race itself? If Sebastian Vettel cares, I think he's going to wipe the floor with Stroll next year. If he doesn't, then they're just going to be a mediocre team, because that's what they are attempting or wanting to be. They just want to sell. They're like, in making an American reference, it's like Hendrick Motorsports and NASCAR. They used to have the big names and they'll bring champions on and do all that, but they want to sell, merchandise, and they want to sell a name, but they don't want to have performance. I feel like between McLaren with Renault or Alpine, and then there's also Ferrari, you would assume is going to take a step forward again, and then AlphaTauri. I don't see where this Aston Martin tracing point, whatever you want to call him, is going to stay, mainly because of Stroll and some of the decisions he makes and some of the moves he does, because he seems like somebody who doesn't have a clue at times. And I'm like, I get why you're there, but at least don't be a dick, at least try to drive and seem like you know what you're doing. This whole weekend was a waste of time for him, and they lied about him having COVID. Come on, just stop it. Like, put Hulkenberg in that car and or put somebody that can actually drive, and let's see what can happen. I think we did see that at Germany, how that was with both of them, how when they had 2 competitive drivers that neither of them have a job, what that team could do.
I feel like Stroll this season did sort of, show his of being a legitimate bona fide racing driver, but there've been a couple of performances this season that have shown, less shown, but suggested that, maybe it wasn't the right decision to be keeping him for next season. But I guess when your daddy owns a team, you're the number one. And speaking of number ones, now we're on to the driver of the day. So, Alex, who was your driver of the day?
I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc. Yeah, I could see that. Sam?
I probably would have said Perez up until the last stint, because I'd say that move on Gasly was pretty late. And if he gets penalty for that, then fair enough. I'm going to say Pierre. Yeah, Gasly this week. Just, it seems to be doing it every week right now. Just these banging kind of midfield drives gets him to like 5th, 6th. Of course, he's got the race win, but most of the drives this year have just been stellar. Kind of when he's not had. Of course, his car was on fire early on in the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he's bounced back from that. He himself is on fire this season.
Absolutely.
To be honest, if it comes to the end of the season review, if I'm on that, he's most likely might be my driver of the season. But yeah, Dave Gasly.
Yeah, I'll go with the straightforward thing for me. I know that I think in terms of the 2 best drivers, I think Alex and Sam took them for this whole year in terms of what they're doing relative to their equipment. I'm going to go the opposite of that. The person that's supposed to be doing what they're doing with their equipment and doing stuff that nobody thought would ever happen, I'll take Lewis to go. It wasn't his finest weekend at first, but he showed up in qualifying when he needed to. It wasn't the finest start, but in the end, he went and basically took Bottas's soul for the 100th time and won by 25 seconds and broke a record that I never thought would ever be broken with 91 Formula One wins. It's just unbelievable to me that, that happened, and there's more to come. It's just an amazing thing. I would have never thought when he debuted as a rookie in Australia in 2007, qualified up front and finished on the podium, that we'd be in this spot, 13, 14 years later, that he's the winningest driver in the Formula One history. So I have to give props to Lewis.
Yeah.
We've watched history in the making today.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
honestly was history in the making, which is just on a point that you just made there, Phil. Like the seasons between like 2009, 2010, 2011, Lewis was pretty much nowhere for those seasons. Even 2012, you could probably argue. But honestly, that move to Mercedes just was the right time, right equipment, the right driver, and he's fully deserved everything that he's had over, the last 7 years.
To thank Niki Lauda, he was probably looking from above, had a grin going on wearing his hat.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to agree with Sam, actually, and give it to Pierre. It's one of the few times where I actually get involved in the driver of the day vote, and I voted Pierre Gasly before he'd made the move. I was like, maybe this was a mistake, seeing Perez just shooting off. But then once he caught back up to him and overtook him, I was like, yep, I was right. Pierre Gasly, driver of the day, because, we expected Lewis to be there. We expected Max to be P3, but Pierre Gasly up in P5, solid performance. And, if he keeps banging them in, he's got to be in a decent car very, very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that concludes the show. So if you are watching on Facebook, because we've managed to get back online, stick around. If you aren't watching on Facebook, we do live stream these shows on Facebook now. So make sure you like the Chronicle on Facebook, and you'll be able to find links for that in the podcast description, I believe. We're available on Amazon Music, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Omni Studio, and Pocket Cast. Just search F1 Grid Talk. There's a huge back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and the race results. This was episode 69, which is a very nice number to be. We're on Reddit. Just search for the subreddit F1 Grid Talk. And we'll be back tomorrow to preview the Imola GP weekend. Thank you very much to my panelists for joining me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening, and goodbye.